Shawn, put your arms up. It helps with the signal. Carry the other one.
And there we go. I'm plugged in.
You're plugged in and ready to go.
All right, let's do this.
All right,
William, we're finally good to go.
Okay, hey, welcome everybody.
Again. Oh, Brendan's back.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Brenden, you're making me seasick. Be still.
Hold still.
I had to set up my phone.
Are you good, Brenden?
Okay,
Yeah.
lower your camera a little bit, Shawn.
Hey, here we go, guys.
We're recording, so we're good.
Hey, my name is William Friedman. I live in Sandpoint, Idaho. This is Mr. Jim Glenn. We'll be your host tonight. He's from San Antonio, Texas. Hey, thanks for being with us. We're happy to have you. I'd like to send a special welcome out to all the new guests that might be here tonight, perhaps for the very first time. This is our ASEA broadcast, where we bring interesting and unique perspectives about the science of ASEA, the business of ASEA, and real life-changing experiences to all of you, which is what we're going to focus on tonight. Tonight's guests are Mr. Brenden Nichols and Mr. Shawn Burke. Today, we will hear a touching real-life story, about one of the strongest men I've ever met. Brenden's story will touch you and inspire you, like it did me. And Shawn Burke is a part of this story, as he was Brenden's therapist, trainer, and friend through this incredible journey. Together, against all odds, they achieved the greatest victory any two men could hope for. This is Brenden's story. So we're going to show a couple of videos from a TV station, and there's going to be two parts to this. So we want to show you the videos first to put this in proper context, and then we're going to have live Brenden and Shawn with us.
Here we go, guys. Let me find the video now. Oh, don't laugh at me. Okay, which one is it? Okay, part one. All right, found it. Can you see it?
You got it.
Okay.
Other news tonight, a young man from Coeur d'Alene is changing the way people around him look at life.
KREM2's Rob Harris had the privilege of sitting down with Brenden Nichols and shares his inspiring story.
So we got your application we got done for Eastern.
It's just around noon, and 24-year-old Brenden Nichols is sitting down for lunch with his mom, Jody.
Taking back to Brendan's childhood, what was the character trait that stood out for Brenden growing up?
He was 40 years old in a 5-year-old body. He wanted to parent all the other little kids.
And so growing up and seeing this 40-year-old in a 5-year-old's body, what did you picture his future to look like?
I figured he'd be really successful. He was always really driven. He was a straight-A student.
The good grades and the drive all had a purpose for Brenden. At age 18, he began his studies at Carroll College, aiming to be a neurosurgeon, because as he puts it, the brain is the final frontier. But on October 15th, 2011, those plans changed.
Oh, I remember the whole accident. I was driving on the Lolo Pass, which is a pretty curvy road. I came around the corner, and the river's on the left, mountains on the right, and deer jumps off the mountain. I was about to go over the edge. I wrenched the wheel the other way, overcorrecting. I hit my head on the steering wheel and was knocked unconscious.
I got that call at 4 o'clock in the morning. All they could tell us was that he was still breathing when they put him in the ambulance, but we needed to get to Missoula as soon as possible. At that point, you kind of aren't thinking, you're just on autopilot. And I actually called my next door neighbor to ask them if they would come help me because I wasn't sure I could drive. She drove me to Missoula. We got there really fast. I think we got there in about 90 minutes. And when I got there, they take you into the little room and they tell you what's going on. And that little room is my nightmare. And they had told me that he had a severe brain injury and that the likelihood that he would survive was slim. The next 72 hours would be critical. At 72 hours, we were ecstatic that he was still alive. And then we met with this neurosurgeon, and he literally told us that euthanasia would be a better option for our son than the life he was going to live. And at that point, you kind of, as a parent, collapse. And it makes me teary thinking about it. But once I got my composure back, I decided that I didn't want that surgeon anywhere near my son, because he didn't know my son, and I wanted to give him a chance.
While not every doctor that the Nichols family spoke to had an equally grim prognosis, each told the family that the chances of Brenden returning to a normal life were slim, but they weren't ready to give up.
I had done this big memory board for him, and I'm kind of crafty. And I put just different accomplishments he had had, whether it been as a family member, as a brother, as Boy Scouts. Anybody who came into that room, I made them look at that board. And I wanted them to see who this was, not who was in the bed. And the prognosis that they'd given him, I wanted them to give him a chance.
Brenden was in a coma basically for 4 months, with some brief moments of increased awareness. He was making gradual progress, though, and he was able to be transferred out of ICU and moved to a hospital in North Idaho. That's where he first met Dr. Todd Hoopman.
Do you remember the first time you saw Brenden Nichols?
I do. He was not awake. He would mostly lay in bed during the days, but there were periods of time where he was somewhat more alert, but not responsive. He couldn't speak and really wasn't engaged with his environment in any way.
When you saw him in that condition, what did you think was his long-term outlook?
You know, it was really hard to predict at that time. He was still fairly recent from his injury, and the tricky thing about head injuries is it's very hard to predict long-term outcomes. Certainly the level of injury that he had had was on the very concerning end of that spectrum.
The Nichols family kept hoping and praying and rearranging their lives to make sure Brenden was never alone. And doctors and therapists kept working with him too, hoping that he could regain his consciousness and ability to speak. And then one day, a breakthrough. Brenden gave a thumbs up, and he kept improving from there.
He was working with a speech and language pathologist, and she had held up a card that said, make a fist, and he did it, and I'm like, oh my God, he can read. And I was like, that's huge.
As Brenden became more and more conscious, doctors and family began to realize just how much of a miracle he was. Despite trouble speaking and some memory issues, his cognitive ability today is pretty much exactly what it was before his accident. In fact, Brenden says one of his biggest frustrations is that some people assume he can't understand them just based on the way he speaks.
Just because someone can't speak well doesn't mean that they can't think well. I may talk slowly, but I sure as heck don't think slowly.
Wow, what a
He's
recovery.
amazing.
No kidding. As Brendan's consciousness comes back, the physical impact of his accident remained. When he left the hospital, he had to rely on a wheelchair, and doctors weren't sure what mobility, if any, he would regain.
But as you saw, nothing seems to keep Brenden back. So tomorrow we'll share part 2 of his inspiring story. I know I'm looking. Idaho native making progress on his recovery after he nearly died in a car crash. His story is incredible. Yesterday we brought you the first part of our story on Brenden Nichols, and that crash left him in a coma when he was just 18 years old.
Today, Creme 2's Rob Harris has part 2 of this story. When we left off yesterday, Nichols had exceeded the expectations of doctors by surviving that crash.
So today we are learning he was aiming for much more than just survival.
After months in the hospital, most of which were spent in a coma, Brenden had stabilized enough that he was ready to finally return home. But home life was going to look a lot different than it had before.
When we brought him home, he was still full assist everything. We literally put him in a bed in our bedroom. He had to relearn everything. We had to relearn how to swallow, how to talk, how to toilet train. I mean, it was basically like raising a baby again in a 18-year-old body. I had a 200-pound baby.
Keeping a sense of humor and a positive outlook was important for the Nichols family. Just the fact that Brenden was with them was itself a miracle. But the driven young boy, who had run a marathon at age 15, wasn't ready to give up on learning to walk again.
After a few weeks at home, I thought, no, I'm going to do this.
When I first saw Brenden, he couldn't even sit up.
Physical trainer and therapist Shawn Burke had been following Brenden's recovery since his accident. Working in the field, Burke knew the odds were stacked against Brenden. But he also saw the drive that Brenden had.
I have never seen a determination of an individual like I've seen with Brenden. If people would just have half the drive that he had, this would be such a better place. I worked with him on how to work on a sit-in balance, and then I worked with him on how to stand. I was there when he took his first steps. I was there when he sat up for the first time.
I went from the wheelchair to a walker and then walking sticks, and finally, after a few years, I'm walking independently now. No assistive devices.
That's right. After a lot of hard work and a few miracles along the way, Brenden began walking on his own once again. And then he was swimming and running on an assisted treadmill. There are some lasting effects of his accident. Brenden still struggles to speak due to paralysis in his vocal cords, and tremors in his hands forced him to rule out his career goal of becoming a neurosurgeon. But his experience following his accident has introduced him to a new dream.
I fell in love with the physical therapy and helping people to improve their life through exercises.
Brenden already had a connection. Burke, his physical therapist, had opened up Foundation Fitness in Coeur d'Alene.
He says, Shawn, my goal is I want to be a therapist and I want to be a trainer. And I said, let's do it. We paid for him to become a trainer. I said, if you're willing to do that, I will pay for that. And I said, you have a job. And he's like, you're kidding. And I said, no, come work for me and give back to what you want to do.
Good job keeping your back straight.
Today, Brenden works as a trainer at Foundation Fitness with clients who themselves have physical impairments. And as he worked, his story spread throughout the facility to a friendly face from the past.
I remember one of the last times I saw Brenden, it was in a darkened room to try and reduce the amount of stimulation at the time, because stimulation really gave him trouble. He was in a bed, he was not up in a chair, he was not walking, he wasn't even sitting on his own.
And that was the last time you saw him until...
I think it was about 5 years later. I was going to the gym at Foundation Fitness, and I passed by him coming out of the door as I was coming in, and I asked someone at the desk, who was that, or what is his name? The first words I said when they told me that was Brenden was, that's an absolute miracle. And we don't use that word in medicine very often. I think that's a tricky word to sometimes put out there, but I don't know if I would have expected to see him walk by me one day passing in a door.
It's not the typical story of Brenden's recovery, and we know that. I mean, he's kind of like this walking miracle.
Good. Never give up. Never surrender. God will bring you through. Just keep the faith.
It's incredible, isn't it?
I love that story. Yeah. And it's such a good reminder for all of us, right? To not set limitations on yourself.
Yeah, in the story we heard yesterday, part one of that story, Brenden's mother was talking about how one of the doctors was trying to encourage her to take him off life support at one point. And look at him today.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
We're cheering for you.
Mm-hmm.
We're all cheering for you too, Brenden. Absolutely we are. You know, You guys, go ahead and unmute yourselves.
Whoops.
I got you, Brenden. I got you, Brenden. I got you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brenden. You know, you are a miracle. Brenden, what do you think of ASEA and how ASEA helped you?
It was the difference maker. It's like everything in my body all of a sudden woke up with these redox signaling molecules, which are naturally produced in the body, but not to a great enough extent increased. So it was just so much more efficient.
Nice, wonderful, wonderful. And I know today, Brenden, you're not working at Shawn's gym anymore. You've moved on to some pretty big ambitions, right?
Yes.
And so, go ahead.
I'm attending the University of Washington for physiology.
Fantastic.
And I only have about a year left full time.
Wow, that is incredible. That is incredible. And like you said, your mind works perfect. Your mind works perfect. And your body works really well too, doesn't it?
It does now.
Wow, Brenden, this is an amazing story and such an example for all of us that you fought so hard, that you just never gave up, and you have the attitude and you have the spirit and you have the faith, which is a big part of this for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I would be nowhere without Jesus.
Yeah. You know, this is really fantastic, really fantastic. And Brenden, tell us about what your average day looks like today.
Well, I get up fairly early, like 6 or 7, and go to the school gym. I live about an hour by bus away, so I bus to the gym, work out for a couple hours. That includes a warm-up and cool down, and then go to class for an hour or so, unless it's a lab day, and then it's 3+ hours. And then I do homework until the bus home starts running, and go home, do more homework.
Wow. That's a very full day. That's a very full day. And so you're carrying a full load in college, aren't you?
Yeah.
That's so great, Brenden. We are so proud of you. Hey, Shawn, would you jump on and tell us what this experience was for you? Because I know, Shawn, you're a fighter like Brenden, and you've been fighting your whole life. And I know that God brought you guys together. That you were into a team, right? An unstoppable team. Shawn, tell us about your experience with Brenden and going through this.
Well, I had known Brenden before he went off to college. I actually went to his graduation, and we kind of knew each other from then. And then I heard about the accident when I was at Kootenai Medical Center, because I was really close to his, not his family, but his girlfriend's family at the time. And I heard about it, and it was pretty traumatic. In fact, the information I got was he wasn't going to make it. And I'm like, there's no way. And so I was following him through the process of him being in the hospital. And then when he got out of the hospital and they had taken him home, it was probably a week later that I actually got a hold of the parents. and told him that I think I have something that may help him. And his dad is an atomic physicist or an engineer, atomic physicist. Oh, what is he? He's a smart guy.
He's by trade a civil engineer, but he has a chemical engineering degree.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, you're right. He's a really smart guy.
Yeah, he is. And so we went to a presentation, and I can remember this is probably the first time I actually saw Brenden, and they were bringing him to the presentation. And I remember the parents getting him out of the car, and it was like full assist to get him out of the car. And they put him into the wheelchair, and they wheeled him into this presentation. And Dr. Carl Smith was the one doing the presentation here in Spokane. And Brenden was in the wheelchair, and he was kind of going back and forth. His dad was actually behind him, holding him up. That's how unstable he was. And I can remember Dr. Carl Smith talking about redox molecules, and Brenden in the wheelchair is sitting back, and he's just doing this. He can't talk.
Brenden, did you know what they were talking about?
I knew everything, like my biochemistry that I was going for before. Yeah. I remembered most of that, and I'm like, yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I mean, yeah, it was like he was like just pointing, and his dad was holding him, and he's pointing, and he's all over. And the reason I remember that is because his dad says, I want it, and I want it now. And I'm like, I don't have it. And I had to drive from Spokane back to Coeur d'Alene. His dad called me 3 times and said, do you have it yet? Yeah. I said, I don't.
Wow.
And,
wow.
That's how he first got introduced to it. And then about a week later, at Kootenai Medical Center, he became an outpatient client of mine. And so I worked at Kootenai Medical Center as a physical therapist. And Brenden came in, and he came in the wheelchair, and that's where the bond actually started. I mean, when you are working with an individual like that, and you see his determination, I mean, when you're fighting to stand him up and there's full assist to get him stand up, and you see him and you look at his eyes, I mean, if you don't see, when you can look in Brendan's eyes and see the determination, it's powerful. And you want to work as hard as he is. And I did. And I'm like, Brenden, I'll do whatever it takes to get you back on your feet. I'll do whatever it takes. And then Brenden, and at that time, he wasn't talking, and he would just be, and he would give me a thumbs up. And I remember standing him and just holding him up as much as I can in the parallel bars. And then we were, sitting him up for the first time, and then standing for the first time. And this has been a journey, as you said, for a long time. And so I have seen, and Brenden, everybody thinks, Brenden just has his down times. I can remember being in physical therapy with him, and him just hitting his fist because he was so frustrated that he couldn't do something, and he was trying so hard, and he would bang on the table, and he would just like, and he would, or if he would stumble and fall, we would be out walking, he would stumble, start to fall, and he would get so frustrated. But you know what? He never gave up. He never.
Brenden, so it sounds like you kept Shawn going. And Shawn kept you going, but you motivated Shawn to do more and to work harder.
That's my entire goal in life, is to show people that anything is possible, especially with Christ.
Wow. And Brenden, back in the beginning, do you know how much ASEA you were putting in your body?
Yes, just the regular maintenance dose originally. I increased to 6 ounces for a while, and then 8 ounces for a while, back down to maintenance.
Wonderful. And Brenda, did you notice the change in your body when you increased?
I didn't necessarily, but I made more improvements.
Fantastic, fantastic. And Brendan, the future is very bright for you, isn't it?
It is now.
Yes. That's so amazing, so amazing. And Brendan, what are your goals? I know you're going to get your degree in physiology here in about a year. Where are you going after that?
I'm planning on just working for a while and then going to grad school for physical therapy. I'm into an online program. I haven't decided yet.
Okay.
And eventually, after I get the degree in that, I would like to go back and work for Shawn as his boss.
What do you think of that, Shawn?
I wouldn't have a more dedicated, more motivated employee or boss, whatever you want to call it, than anybody that I've ever met. I mean, you know, Brenda and I go back so far, and like you said, we've helped each other out. I mean, when I never gave up on Brendan. Brendan never gave up on himself. That's what was the bond between us. And, you know, I remember him when he was like in that video you saw where he was swimming in the water. And we kind of laugh about it. Brendan and I talk about it. But the first time I got him into the pool, the reason we got him into the pool was I wanted to work on his breathing. So the better he had breathing, the better he would be able to talk. And so we get into the pool, in the therapy pool, and Brendan's walking around, so we're working on balance and stuff. And then he's like, I'm like, what? And he goes, I'm like, what are you at? And he's like, I'm going underneath the water. I'm like, okay. And Brendan dove underneath the water, and you saw that on the video. He's swimming underneath the water, and he's swimming. And so I'm running right next to him, and all of a sudden he does a flip turn and goes back the other way. And I was like, what? So, you know, things like that. That was a turning point that, you know, he got excited, you know, and then walking with the walking sticks. And then he came up to me, this probably, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago. I went up to go see him at his house, and he goes, Shawn, I've been working on my running. And I'm like, and he's been riding a bike with training wheels. He would ride to our clinic, to the gym on a bike with training wheels, because he's like, I'm going to get back. And then it went from training wheels to no wheels. And then he's like, I'm like, okay. And he goes, now I'm going to be running. So I pulled up into his apartment, into the parking lot. And he says, because the first time I had been there, and he's like, my apartment's right up there. And I'm like, okay. Well, remember, he told me he had been working on running, right? Yeah. And so I pull into the parking lot, and all of a sudden I see this person just run by me. And it was Brenden. And he says, I told you I've been working on my running.
Wow. Wow.
It was amazing. Yeah. So.
Wow. And so, Brenden, are you, I know you work out every day. Are you doing are you still riding a bike? Are you doing it? What else are you doing?
I'm just focusing on lifting right now. I'm actually thinking about doing a bodybuilding competition.
Wow.
The Washington State Open.
Show me your guns.
Wow. Yeah.
Double bicep.
You know, William, what's amazing about that is when I was working with Brenden, he was skin and bones. He was, you know, he had lost so much weight, and he was, you know, his face was drooped. And, you know, that's funny that we see that, but when I look at that, that is amazing, because I seen him at his worst of his worst. I mean, he had a feeding tube, you know, he was on a feeding tube. He's got a scar. Show me your scar, Brenden, where you had your trach.
Oh, my trach.
Yeah, see, there's our scar. We had the trach.
Okay.
And all that. So, I mean, when you look at that, those are battle wounds. Those are battle wounds for a person. I mean, this guy has been through the ringer. He's been through the war. And those are battle wounds, but he came out as a winner. Yep.
Came out on top.
Yes, he did.
Wow. Wow. Brenden, you know, we are absolutely, every one of us, pulling for you. We are pulling for you in the biggest way. And I will keep you in my prayers. And I know.
Thank you. If you could, and anyone else listening, pray that I figure out a way to stay at the University of Washington to finish my degree.
You got it. You got it. You guys, he says, pray for him, if you didn't understand him, to be able to stay at the University of Washington to finish his degree. You know, with all the prayers coming out about this right now, it's probably, I would say it's a done deal. It's got to be a done deal. Wow. Awesome. Awesome, Brenden. You know, we want to have you back, and we want to follow your progress. And, you know, more importantly, you know, we want to do something to actually really make a difference in your life. And so Shawn and I'm not going to announce it tonight, but Shawn and I have been talking. We got a plan. We got a plan. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know you're loved by everybody that's on tonight. I know you've been loved.
I see all the notifications from people typing prayers sent up or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Hey, William.
I'm very blessed.
And Brenden can relate to this. So I've had Brenden on where he actually met Dr. Gary Samuelson for a short time. And the reason and when he got on to meet Gary Samuelson for the first time, it was a very powerful moment because of the fact that Brenden didn't want, his statement to Dr. Gary Samuelson was, when you're down and you're having a bad day, think about me, because you have motivated me and give me my life back. So if you're ever having a bad day, think about what you did for me. And I've seen Brenden do that for everybody out there. When you guys are having a bad day, this gentleman right here, think about him. I had a friend of mine this last week who had a situation where he had to do something really fast, and it was like one of these things where it's like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. And I talked to him the next day, and I said, well, how did you do that? He said, I thought about Brenden. I thought about Brenden, and what would Brenden do in this situation? He wouldn't give up, and he would go through. And so, and Brenden, I don't want to be speaking for you, but you've said that more than once, and
that's my whole goal.
That's fantastic, you guys. Hey, Shawn, I'm having a thought. Would it be possible for the people that are on right now to perhaps maybe send an email note of support, maybe to you, so we don't maybe inundate Brendan's computer or email? But, at Foundation Fitness, would that be possible?
They can send it to, Burke Shawn 32 at yahoo.com.
Burke Shawn 32 at yahoo.com.
Yep, and I'll get that to him.
Awesome. Well, guys, this has been so amazing. Mr. Jim, do you want to ask anything?
The thing that amazes me, Brenden, is your smile. Every time Shawn brought up something about the past, you're doing that. You're smiling. And Shawn, I don't know. I got to get my camera. I got to get a picture of that. But Shawn, how does it make you feel? And I think there's a good mixture of the exercise story in this as well to help with this recovery, because I know that also touches your heart deeply because of what you went through, correct? Back in your earlier days in the military.
Yeah.
But how does that make you feel knowing what you've done for this young man, for their family? And then again, go into a little bit more detail what you think these molecules did for him and how they assisted him in where he is today.
Well, I will tell you that I would not be where I'm at in life. I'm much more stronger now than I was 5 years ago. And that's because of working with Brenden and working with, and him motivating me. So, 5 years ago, I wouldn't be in the business. I wouldn't be in the business of ASEA because I saw what it did for Brenden, and I knew that there's more Brendens out there in the world, and so I will not give up. Brenden has taught me to never give up. Brenden has taught me that there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, can you guys imagine being in the same position as Brenden was and having no hope? But when he, in his mind, wasn't going to give up, that's how I got through the military. Was I had to get into that focus on how am I going to get through this situation? And when it was like going to battle with your best friend and coming out a winner, getting through those obstacles. But the other thing is that, you had Dr. Robinson Ward on last week, and he talked about exercise and that, exercise produces more mitochondrions and then it produces more redox molecules. So the mixture of, what was interesting with Brenden is we got him on redox molecules, ASEA, and then he started getting better. Well, what that actually did is made him exercise more. So he was able to come to physical therapy treatments and do a whole hour. Sometimes we would do an hour and a half treatment. Now that's unheard of. So he went from going from like half hour to 45 minutes to an hour and a half we would spend. Now that was because that was after we introduced the redox molecules to him that he started progressing. So what I was saying is he was able to do more physical therapy for a longer period of time, which in turn made him get stronger and better faster. Same thing as an athlete. Brenden was is an athlete, but he was very athletic. You heard on the video that he did a marathon at 15 years old. So when you look at that athletic body that he had, and it was this damaged, and then he started exercising, we put the redox molecules and it just compounded that opportunity for him to be able to work. He was coming into physical therapy at least 2 or 3 times a week, hour and a half at a time. And then he would go home and he would work out too. So when he's working out for 2 or 3 hours a day, that's Brendan's MO. That's his mode of operation. He knows that will keep his mind clear, that knows that would help him to reach that goal that he wants to do. And when you put that combination,
that's exactly it.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Brenden, this is.
Can't help but think though, Shawn, too real quick, William, that why everybody needs to be on these molecules, because we never know when that's going to happen. And our body needs to be fully armed and ready to go no matter what battle we go into, because we just never know. And that's kind of what just wrecks my heart is that, from this point forward, guys, there's only 3 things that can happen. You're going to either get a call from your doctor, something's wrong, or you're going to wake up in the back of an ambulance, kind of like what Brenden did, or after the surgeries, or you're going to pass away. And so many people are just living and not thinking about something could happen, but to happen so young for you, Brenden. But again, I just can't get over your smile, man. That's just, hey, do that look again, man. You guys see that? Do that again. There you go. I love it. Okay, Shawn, you got to do it too. I love it.
Hey guys, I want to remind everybody that Brenden will be at the convention in Las Vegas. So guys, it's going to be your chance to go up and meet Brenden. Please do. I know Brenden would really appreciate that. All of us that know Brenden are trying to do everything we can to help him. We're looking for ways to help him get his ASEA business going. We want to support him in every way we can. So you have Shawn's email. If you can think of something we can do, something you can do to help Brenden, I know it'll be appreciated. And Brenden, we're all cheering you on. We're with you all the way, my friend. all the way.
Hey, William, can I say something? Is that all right?
Sure.
Yeah. So I don't know who everybody out there, but I want to personally thank, and I know Brenden will too. He'll thank him afterwards. But we started a fundraiser for Brenden to go to the convention, and we put it on Facebook. And I think it was in 3 days we raised the money to pay for his airfare and hotel.
Yes.
It was so, and there's a friend of mine who helped get that started, and I can't thank him enough. He's become a really good friend of mine. But I can't thank the ASEA family enough for allowing this to happen. This has been a dream of Brenden's for a long time. He's now healthy enough that he can go. And
Yes.
the love and support that was given by the ASEA family was deeply appreciated. I know it touched my heart.
The warm fuzzies.
Brenden, you're so amazing. You just have the perfect response every time. You guys, this has been one of the magic moments in my life. And I know that we're all friends. You're connected to all of us. And Brenden, you've done so much to help all of us understand what's possible. To understand what's possible in your faith, to understand what's possible, and all the people that you've helped in their ASEA business because of you sharing your story. All right? And
that's my whole goal, like I said.
Yeah. This is an amazing, this is what life is all about right here. This is why we're all here. And this is the work we're supposed to do, is to come together, put our arms around each other, support each other. Sometimes we have to carry each other across the finish line. And I just know that Brenden will be the guy that carries so many people across the finish line. Brenden, I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
Guys, as we wrap up, do you have any final words, Shawn?
It's every time I get on, talk with Brenden, every time I see a story of him, obviously I definitely get emotional, because it's like having a son who went through a traumatic injury and not knowing if he was going to be there or not, and then watching him do that. I mean, Brenden he's like a son to me that I never had, and he is very close to me, and he will always be a part of my life no matter what. And the tears at first are tears of joy, because I have seen this individual struggle and struggle and struggle and always give. He's always a giver. He wanted to get better so that he can prove to other people that they could get better. It wasn't, part of it, he wants to get better, but he wants to prove to people that if you have the faith and you have the determination and the drive, you can do anything. And that's what Brenden is. That's what's in his heart. It's in his head and it's in his heart. His heart is big as anybody I've ever met. His determination is bigger than anybody I ever met. And I'm not sugarcoating any of this. I'm telling you guys, I've been with this guy for over 5 years. I've seen him at his worst, darkest moment of his life. And now to see him at the University of Washington fulfilling his dream that he wants to do. Life doesn't get any better than this. And what you said, William, you're correct. If you ever had to go across the battlefield, this is a guy you want with you right here, because he will take you to the end.
Awesome. Thank you, Shawn. Brenden, you have the final word, the last word.
Well, I'll end with my quote from that video: never give up, never surrender, ever. And God will bring you through. Just keep the faith. Christ is there for you.
Thank you, Brenden. What a great way to end this amazing time together. You're getting claps from all over the world right now, and you guys take care. We'll be seeing you. We'll be seeing you at convention, and I'll be seeing you in my prayers when I pray for you. I'll be thinking about you.
Hey, real quick, Shawn, give your email one more time, please. Just in the event someone missed it.
Okay, so it's Burke, B-U-R-K-E, Shawn, S-H-A-W-N, 32 at yahoo.com.
And if anybody missed that, you can get a hold of William or myself. We both have that. Thank you, Brenden.
Thank you for the opportunity.
We've been trying to get you for a while. You've been a hard man to reach.
Well, I've been so busy with school and everything.
Well, we also know you're working on your arms a little bit too. I want to see those again. Come on. There you go.
Guys,
I'm not going to do that. I would be massively embarrassed. John, it's your turn. All right, guys. There we go.
Sounds pretty strong too.
All right, William. I'm not doing
I don't have it. You can't see my muscles.
Oh, there you go. All right, guys. Thank you. What a blessing this was.
All
Thank
right.
you, guys. God bless.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye. Thanks, Brenden.
Thanks, Brenden.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.